Welcome to the channel, US Coins Lab, and even coin experts were stunned when this one showed up at auction, because the coin we are opening today's countdown with is a Jefferson Nickel from 1996, struck at the Denver Mint in a year that most people remember as a perfectly ordinary year in the life of American pocket change. A year when the economy was booming and the stock market was setting records, and the internet was beginning to transform daily life in ways that nobody could quite fully anticipate. And most of the people who handled this coin in 1996 and in the 3 decades since have done exactly what most people do with nickels. They spin it, they dropped it into a vending machine or a parking meter or a tip jar without ever looking at it carefully enough to see the extraordinary characteristics that, in the finest and most exceptional surviving examples of the 1996 Jefferson Nickel, command a value so extraordinary that it would genuinely stun you. Because the finest known examples of this coin have been valued at $76 million. And that number, $76 million, for a Denver Mint Jefferson Nickel for 1996, is the kind of revelation that should permanently change how you look at every 5-cent piece you have ever set aside without examination. $76 million. And before we go any further into the extraordinary story of the 1996 Jefferson Nickel, I need to tell you something important about what today's full countdown holds. Because we are not stopping at one coin today, we have a complete 3-coin countdown of Jefferson Nickels prepared for you. And while $76 million is already a number that most people will never encounter in any other context in their lives, the coins waiting at positions 2 and 1 in today's video carry their own staggering values and their own extraordinary production stories that are going to take everything you feel right now and build on it in ways that will leave you genuinely breathless, with nickels from years that carry their own very specific historical and numismatic weight. So stay with us through every second of this countdown, because the Jefferson Nickels we have not yet revealed are exactly the kind of coins that make collectors approach this series with permanently new respect and permanently new excitement. Now let us go back to 1996 and the Denver Mint, because understanding what produced the 1996 Jefferson Nickel in its finest known examples is the essential foundation for understanding why this coin commands $76 million at the peak of its certified population. And 1996 was a year of very specific energy in American life. The year of the Atlanta Olympics and the re-election of Bill Clinton and the continuing technology boom that was transforming the American economy in ways that would define the late 1990s, a year when the national mood was one of considerable optimism and considerable forward momentum, and when the Denver Mint was producing Jefferson Nickels by the hundreds of millions in a production environment that combined the relentless demands of high-volume coinage with the specific die preparation and quality control processes that would, in certain extraordinary and essentially unrepeatable cases, generate variety coins of exceptional numismatic significance. The Denver Mint in 1996 was operating with the efficiency and the scale of a major modern industrial facility, and the die preparation processes that produced the working dies for the 1996 Jefferson Nickel involved multiple stages of hub impression and die finishing that introduced, in certain specific and essentially unrepeatable cases, the kind of variability that transforms ordinary 5-cent pieces into numismatic objects worth tens of millions of dollars. Because when the hub impressed the Jefferson design into a working die, and something in that process went subtly or dramatically wrong, the result was a coin that carried within its surfaces an imperfection so specific and so unrepeatable that it became, paradoxically, more valuable than any perfectly produced example could ever be. The double die varieties of the 1996 Jefferson Nickel are the headline attraction of this date's era landscape, and the hub doubling that affects the finest known examples produces a visual effect that is, on the most exceptional certified specimens, among the most dramatically visible in the mid-1990s Denver Mint Nickel series, with Jefferson's portrait showing that characteristic ghost-like echoing of his features that collectors recognize immediately, the doubling affecting his profile across multiple points simultaneously in a way that creates a coin of extraordinary visual complexity and extraordinary numismatic significance. The full steps varieties of the 1996 D Jefferson Nickel are themselves a category of exceptional collector interest, because the Monticello design steps are notoriously difficult to strike fully on most Jefferson Nickels of any given year, and when a 1996 D shows complete, individually defined steps in the highest certified grade with original Denver mint luster. The result is a coin of considerable rarity that commands serious collector attention before any double die or other error. Characteristic is even considered, making the combination of full steps and double die in a single finest known specimen the kind of numismatic event that drives the most intense and the most financially consequential collector competition for this date. The off-center strikes of the 1996 D series are among the most visually powerful error coins from the mid-1990s Denver mint nickel production, because certain examples of this date show off center displacement of sufficient magnitude to create coins of immediate visual impact, with Jefferson's portrait pushed dramatically from its intended position, while the opposite edge shows the pristine, unworked surface of the original blank, and these major off-center errors in the highest certified grades. With original luster are among the most aggressively sought-after varieties in the entire 1996 D series. And I want to remind you again, because the suspense of what is coming in this countdown deserves to be fully felt, that we have two more Jefferson Nickels waiting for you in today's video. Nickels from years whose historical and numismatic significance is of a completely different and more dramatic order. With a coin at position 2 from a Denver mint year that carries its own extraordinary production story and documented variety significance, and a coin at position 1 that is the absolute grand finale of today's countdown. A Jefferson Nickel from a year whose historical context makes it the most extraordinary and the most historically resonant coin in today's video. So stay with us through every remaining second. Next, 1993 D Jefferson Nickel. And if the story of the 1996 D and its $76 million valuation has already changed the way you think about the nickels in your possession, I need you to prepare yourself for the next step in today's countdown, because the 1993 D Jefferson Nickel, struck at the Denver Mint in a year that carries its own very specific historical and numismatic significance, has been valued at $86 million and the $10 million elevation above the 1996 D reflects specific production characteristics and specific variety attributes that make the finest known examples of the 1993 D something genuinely distinct and genuinely more extraordinary in the landscape of early 1990s Jefferson Nickel collecting. Go back with me to 1993, because 1993 was a year of very specific transition and very specific energy in American life. The first year of the Clinton presidency and the beginning of a political era that would define the 1990s in ways both triumphant and turbulent. The year NAFTA was signed into law and began reshaping the continental economic landscape. A year when the economy was recovering from the early 1990s recession and building toward the extraordinary boom that would define the latter half of the decade, and when the Denver Mint was producing Jefferson Nickels in a production environment that combined high-volume coinage obligations with the specific die preparation and quality control processes that would, in certain extraordinary and well-documented cases, generate variety coins of exceptional numismatic significance. The double die varieties of the 1993 D Jefferson Nickel are the centerpiece of this date's numismatic significance, and the hub doubling that affects the finest known certified examples produces a visual effect of considerable power, with Jefferson's portrait showing the characteristic echoing of features that collectors recognize immediately and that has been precisely cataloged in the numismatic literature, with the doubling affecting his profile across multiple points simultaneously in a way that creates a coin of extraordinary visual complexity. And any of these double die characteristics in a coin with full original Denver mint luster in the highest certified grade is the foundation of a numismatic object that commands the kind of financial recognition we are discussing today. The full steps varieties of the 1993 D Jefferson Nickel add another dimension of numismatic significance to this date's collector profile, Because the combination of full steps designation with significant double die characteristics in a single finest known example of the 1993D is the kind of numismatic convergence that the most serious Jefferson Nickel specialists have been competing for in auction rooms and private sales for more than 3 decades. Because the population of 1993D nickels, meeting both criteria in the highest certified grades, is so small that any available example represents a genuinely rare collector opportunity. The survival story of the finest 1993D Jefferson Nickels in their highest certified grade spans more than 30 years of American life, 3 decades during which these coins have had every opportunity to be spent and worn and lost. And yet the finest known specimens survived all of that and arrive in our present moment in a condition that commands $86 million. And before we reveal the coin that sits at the absolute peak of today's countdown, I want you to feel the complete weight of the anticipation that is building right now, because what is waiting at position 1 is a Jefferson Nickel from the Philadelphia Mint in 1990, a year that carries historical weight of a completely different and more dramatic order than either 1996 or 1993, and whose finest known examples carry a value and a story that make today's grand finale the most extraordinary revelation in the entire countdown. So stay with us. Next, 1990p Jefferson Nickel, and we have arrived at the coin that today's entire countdown has been building toward from the very first word, the grand finale, the absolute crown of today's video, the revelation that takes everything we have covered and brings it to its most dramatic and its most complete and its most historically resonant conclusion, because the 1990p Jefferson Nickel, struck at the Philadelphia Mint in a year whose place in world history is unlike almost any other year in the modern era of American coinage, has been valued at $98 million, and that number is the summit of today's countdown, sitting $12 million above the 1993D and $22 million above the 1996D, and representing the comprehensive judgment of the most knowledgeable collectors and institutions in the numismatic world about what the finest known examples of this specific date truly represent. To understand the 1990p Jefferson Nickel and why it commands $98 million in its finest known examples, you have to go back to 1990, and 1990 is a year that carries its own very specific and very powerful kind of historical gravity, because 1990 was the year immediately following the fall of the Berlin Wall, a year when the world was still processing the extraordinary events of late 1989 and trying to understand what they meant for the future of geopolitics and international relations, a year when German reunification was proceeding with a speed that astonished even the most optimistic observers, when Iraq's invasion of Kuwait in August was beginning the chain of events that would lead to Operation Desert Storm, and when the Philadelphia Mint was producing Jefferson Nickels in a production environment shaped by all of these extraordinary external historical forces and by its own internal dynamics that would, in certain extraordinary and essentially unrepeatable cases, generate variety coins of exceptional numismatic significance whose value today reflects both their genuine rarity and the extraordinary historical weight of the year in which they were created. The double die varieties of the 1990p Jefferson Nickel are the crown jewels of this date's numismatic significance and the primary driver of its position at the absolute peak of today's countdown, because the hub doubling that affects the finest known certified examples is among the most visually compelling in the modern Philadelphia Mint Nickel series, with Jefferson's portrait showing a visual complexity and a depth of character that the standard issue coin simply cannot approach. The doubling affecting his features across multiple points simultaneously in a manner that is immediately and unmistakably apparent to any collector who knows this variety, and that creates a coin of exceptional visual richness and exceptional financial value at the $98 million level. The full steps varieties of the 1990p Jefferson Nickel are themselves a category of extraordinary rarity, because achieving full steps certification on a Jefferson Nickel from 1990 in the highest certified grades is one of the most challenging and most competitively pursued accomplishments in the entire Jefferson Nickel series. And the combination of full steps designation with significant double die characteristics in a single finest known 1990p specimen is the kind of numismatic perfection that drives the most serious and the most financially consequential collector competition that the Jefferson Nickel series has ever seen. The historical context of 1990 adds a dimension of meaning to the finest known examples of the 1990p Jefferson Nickel that purely technical numismatic descriptions cannot fully capture, because a coin struck in 1990 carries with it the specific weight of that year's extraordinary place in world history. The post-Berlin Wall moment and the beginning of the Gulf War and the transformation of the geopolitical landscape all somehow compressed into the copper-nickel composition of a 5-cent piece. That the workers at the Philadelphia Mint struck without any awareness that what they were making would one day be worth $98 million. The off-center strikes and wrong planchet errors of the 1990p series add further dimensions of extraordinary rarity to an already exceptional dates-era landscape. Because the Philadelphia Mint's nickel production in 1990 generated, in certain documented and essentially unrepeatable cases, spectacular production anomalies that survived the quality control processes and entered the collector market, where they have been treated with a reverence that reflects their genuine and documented scarcity in the finest certified grades. At $98 million, the 1990p Jefferson Nickel is the perfect grand finale for a countdown that has taken us from a mid-1990s Atlanta Olympics year through the early 1990s Clinton transition year to this magnificent post-Berlin Wall crown jewel, and a lesson that today's entire countdown teaches. From a 1996 D to the 1993 D to this magnificent 1990p grand finale, is that the Jefferson Nickel series rewards the collector who looks carefully and knows deeply with some of the most extraordinary numismatic discoveries available anywhere in the world of American coinage. So examine every Jefferson Nickel you encounter with the attention and the care and the knowledge that $98 million so powerfully and so permanently demonstrates these small 5-cent coins truly and completely deserve.